In this video, I'll be showing you how to create a 6 pieces or 8 pieces skirt pattern. Some call it mermaid skirt, some call it panel skirt. Either ways, it can be part of a dress or just a skirt on its own. After watching this, making a panel skirt or mermaid skirt, either one you call it, will never be an issue for you again. I'll be starting by drafting the basic skirt block. If you haven't watched the tutorial on how to draft the basic skirt block, I'll drop the link above and in the description box. But for the purpose of this video, I will just run over it quick and fast. So the first thing I did was to mark out the vertical measurement from my waist to hip, and now I am marking the vertical measurement from the waist to the nail point, and then I drew out the hip line and the nail line. Now I am creating both the front pattern and the back pattern on this piece of paper, so I'll be dividing the paper into two at the end of the day. So a major difference between the front and back is the zipper allowance, right? So on the other edge of my paper there, I marked out a 1 inch wide zipper allowance, and I proceeded to take my horizontal measurement, waist circumference divided by 4, hip circumference divided by 4, and I did the same thing for the back pattern as well. On the knee line, I took out 2 inches from the measurement I used for the hip line, just so our skirt looks shapy, and that measurement was the same thing I used on the hem of the skirt. Okay, this is not yet the hem, we're not using, it's a long skirt, so just hold on and follow me. So right here, I'm marking the waist circumference divided by 4 for the back, and I went ahead to connect my markings for both the front pattern and the back pattern. You will understand this completely if you go watch the video tutorial on how to draft a basic skirt pattern. For a better fit around the waistline, it is advisable to raise the side of the skirt by ½ an inch and to connect it to the dart. So here I am creating my 1 inch wide dart for the front and the back skirt pattern. As I mentioned earlier, I used the same dimension for the waist line and the hem line of the skirt. So this particular line right here is the hem of the skirt. That's the length we went for from the waist. And now I'll just connect the hem to the knee line. Now I did a little adjustment on this back skirt pattern, which I discovered my camera wasn't recording when I did it, but I'll go ahead now to explain all I did on my pattern. For the front skirt pattern, I connected the side of the skirt, and I raised the side, right, and then we lowered the center front waistline. But for the back, we only raised the side, no lowering of the center back waistline. So at the center back as well, we pull out about 3/4 of an inch from the zipper allowance. We are just slanting the zipper allowance, and because of that, you can make use of ½ an inch as well. You are to add it back to the side. So I did that using this red pen just so you understand it. So that line was connected to the hip line, and then from the hip line as well, we took a slanted line and drew it to the nail line, taking out 1 inch from the nail line. That 1 inch was replaced back at the side of the nail line, and from then you just draw your straight line all the way to the hem of the skirt. Okay, I did something similar in a straight skirt tutorial I posted a couple of months ago. So having done this, I went ahead to cut out the patterns, hence the front and the back pattern, and now individual pieces. Now I'll be going ahead to create the panels for mermaid skirt or pieces skirt or panel skirt. But before then, if you're making this into a skirt, you may want to attach a band, right? So what you will do is close up the darts like so, tape it down, and then you mark the height of your band, mark it, then cut out that part of the pattern before opening the darts all over again. So that's how you treat it if it's just a skirt you're making. But if it's part of a dress without band, you're not cutting out a band, then you'll be moving on to, you know, cutting out the panels and, you know, spreading accordingly. So I'm measuring the width of my dart right there, because that's what I want to use for the division. You just need to decide. It can be just 3 inches from the center front, but this is about 4 inches for mine, which is like the center of this skirt actually. So you don't have to make use of 4 inches. It just depends on how you want your skirt to look at the end of the day. So from my dart line, I like to make use of my dart line because then I don't need to sew in any dart again. I drew a straight line downward. I am treating the back pattern the same way I treat the front pattern. Okay, now in order to get a better fit, I always like to raise my nail line a little bit. So I am raising this one by 3 inches. So this is 3 inches above the regular nail line, just so you have, you know, a better fit. Okay, so I drew out the new nail line. I didn't stop there. I measured the former nail line and took out that measurement on the new nail line. So the excess I have at the side right there, I'll go ahead to cut it out. I did the same thing for the back, but then I ended up taking out from the center back rather than the side, but you can actually take it out from the side. Another way you can treat your pattern to get a beautiful fit is to also mark out a dart on the nail line between the divisions of each of the panels. So I took out 1/4 inch on both sides of this line and I blended it into the hip line and into the lower part of the skirt. So that way just gives like more tightness around that area. Okay, so just make sure you don't take too much and become uncomfortable. By taking out 1/4 inch on both sides, that's 1/2 inch, then I will have ended up taking 2 inches from the nail line. So take note of that when you're creating yours. If you are not particular about that, this step is not compulsory. Don't forget to label your patterns. It can become confusing because they look quite similar. So here's my center front, side front, then I have the center back and side back right there. So I also like to mark out exactly where my zipper allowance is, just so I don't use the other side of that particular panel. So here I am cutting out my darts and separating these patterns. So for this I have 4 panels, right? If you're making a 6 pieces skirt, the center front panel should be on fold when you are transferring to fabric. But if you're making an 8 pieces skirt, then you should go ahead and also tighten the center front part of the nail line, just the way I cut this one out. You do the same thing on just that one side, and that means also that your center front cannot be on fold. Okay, but for 6 pieces it should be on fold, and you also will not need to spread towards the center. I will explain later. So these are all my panels. Now each of these panels will be treated in a very similar way. Take the measurement of the nail line on this panel and mark out a straight line. Okay, So you take the measurement, divide it into 2, and mark it all the way down, connect with a straight line, and this will act as your slash line. We're going to slash through this and spread out this pattern to create more fullness for the skirt. Now the degree of fullness is completely dependent on what you want, okay, if and also on the quantity of fabric you have. So for this, like I mentioned earlier on, this is for 8 pieces, even though I didn't tighten the center front, but this is for 8 pieces. I am slashing on both sides of the first line we created, right, and spreading towards the center front and towards the side for this pattern. Now before I go ahead, I will place a plain paper underneath this pattern, mark the midline, that same midline. I want to mark it all the way down, and then this will be a reference point for measurement. I want to know how far I'm spreading. For this particular pattern, I am spreading by 9 inches. So I spread on the left by 9 inches, marked it, taped it down, and I also did the same thing on the right, that's towards the center front, by 9 inches as well. Now you can see that each of this panel increase in height just a little bit because of the way we spread them. So take the measurement right there and mark that same measurement on the midline. Okay, so this is what we are going to connect to both sides of the pattern. You can see the way it looks slightly curvy. That's because of that increment. If you didn't do that, you might have like straight panels and it doesn't exactly look good. So this look way better. At the end of the day, when you join all the panels together, they form like a circular continuation. Okay, they will look well put together as well. So what I just did here, I will repeat the process for all of the other panels, exactly the same way I treated this. Like I mentioned earlier on, if you are making 6 pieces, there will be no need for you to spread towards the center front. That part will just be straight and your fabric will be on fold when you are transferring the center front pattern to fabric. Now here are my patterns. They look very lovely. Like I mentioned, you can spread as wide as you need to depending on the quantity of fabric and the look you are aiming for. During the process of transferring this to fabric, make sure that you notch the nail line, and also don't make it sharp, make it curvy. Place a notch there so that you can be sure that you're attaching each nail line to each other. So at the end of the day, this is what my front pattern looks like. It looks so beautiful, gorgeous. This method allows you to even see your finished work before you go ahead to transfer it to fabric. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you find it helpful, and see you in the next video. Bye.